Caden Thorne stepped out of the small transport, his boots crunching against the red dust of the outer rim. The base looked even worse than the photos. Broken metal panels, shattered windows, and the faint smell of burned circuitry filled the air. Most people would have turned around. Most people would have stayed away. But Caden wasn't most people. He had spent his life flying missions into uncharted sectors, repairing what others called lost causes. This was nothing new except for the stories. Locals whispered that the base was haunted, that the scientists who had worked here had vanished decades ago, that strange creatures roamed the hangars at night. None of it scared him, not really. Curiosity had always outweighed fear. Caden tightened his gloves and pushed open the hangar door. A shiver ran down his spine, but he told himself it was just the cold draft sneaking in from broken seals. Inside, the hangar was dark except for streaks of sunlight cutting through cracks in the walls. Rusted machinery lay scattered like bones. He walked carefully, scanning every corner. Then he saw it, a faint outline under a heavy tarp near the back wall. Something large. Something alive. His pulse quickened. He approached slowly, heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt since his first solo flight through a storm-ravaged asteroid belt. The tarp shifted slightly as he reached out and pulled it back. A massive dragon lay there. Its scales were dull and covered in dust, but the faint glow of its eyes lit the dim hangar. The chains holding it clinked as it shifted, tense and aware. Its breath fogged in the cold air, each exhale rumbling like distant thunder. Caden froze. He studied the chains. They weren't ordinary. They hummed with energy, the metal etched with strange patterns that pulsed faintly. He recognized the design from old Black Ops files he had stumbled across years ago. These chains were made to suppress biofields, to hold a creature far stronger than humans could handle. The dragon's gaze fixed on him. It was intelligent, wary, and in pain. Caden felt a rush of emotion he hadn't expected. Fear, yes, but also empathy. He had faced countless dangers, but nothing like this. A living, thinking being trapped and suffering. The creature could kill him in an instant, yet it seemed to measure him, to understand him. "Easy," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon growled low, a vibration that shook the metal floor. Its wings twitched, dragging chains across the hangar like thunderclaps. Caden realized that one wrong move could mean his death, or worse, failing this creature. He backed away slowly, scanning the room for anything useful. Old tools, loose panels, pieces of the chains, anything he could use to study it safely. He set up a small scanner from his pack, a device meant for detecting energy anomalies. The dragon stiffened when the first pulse hit the floor. The chains rattled. But instead of attacking, it watched. Caden took careful notes, heart racing, as the device recorded the fluctuating energy patterns in the chains. Hours passed. He didn't touch the chains again, but he observed. He watched the way the dragon moved, the way its muscles twitched beneath the dull scales, the way its eyes followed his every movement. It was alive, brilliant, dangerous, and trapped. By nightfall, Caden had set up a temporary shelter in a corner of the hangar. He lit a small heater and tried to eat, but he couldn't stop glancing at the dragon. It seemed to sense his unease. Every time he reached for a tool, it flinched, but it didn't lash out. He realized the creature wasn't just physically restrained, it was mentally alert, calculating every risk. Sleep came in fitful bursts. Each time he woke, the dragon's eyes were open, glowing faintly in the dark. Caden felt a mix of exhaustion and fascination. Here he was, a human alone in a derelict base, facing something that legends said didn't exist, and yet he wasn't afraid. Not completely. He was aware that understanding it was the only way to survive. Then just before dawn, a low rumble shook the hangar. The dragon's chains rattled violently, and the energy readings on his scanner spiked. Caden grabbed his notes and ran to the console. Something was happening, something he hadn't predicted. The pulsing chains were reacting to something outside the base. The dust on the walls vibrated. A faint hum, almost like a warning, filled the hangar. Caden froze, heart pounding. The dragon's eyes locked on him. It was tense, alert, ready to strike, or flee. He realized the danger wasn't just the creature. Something, or someone, was approaching. And if they reached the base before he understood the dragon, the outcome could be catastrophic. He swallowed hard, gripping his scanner tightly. One wrong move, and the being he had just begun to understand could be lost, or he could be. The hangar was silent except for the faint hum and the chains rattling under the dragon's tense weight. Caden took a deep breath. He had no weapons, no backup, and no guarantee he would survive. But he had courage, intelligence, and determination. And he would need all of it in the moments to come. A shadow passed over the hangar entrance. The dragon's head rose slightly, ears twitching. Caden's hand hovered over his scanner controls. The hum grew louder. Something was coming. And the fight to protect the dragon, and himself, was about to begin. Caden didn't move. The shadow lingered at the hangar entrance, shifting as the rising sun caught the jagged edges of the metal door. The hum from the dragon's chains grew louder, vibrating through the floor, and he felt the creature tense beside him. It was bigger than he imagined, each scale thick and sharp, muscles coiled beneath its skin. It could break free if it wanted. He knew he couldn't outrun it, couldn't fight it. The only option was brains and patience. He slowly reached for his scanner, keeping one eye on the doorway, one on the dragon. The device's screen flickered as he activated it, sending a pulse through the hangar. The dragon flinched at first, then leaned into the hum. Caden realized it was learning, too, sensing his movements, trusting the patterns he set. He spoke softly. "We're okay." "Not yet." The shadow shifted again, revealing a figure silhouetted by the sun. Someone was walking toward the hangar. Caden froze. He had expected scavengers, maybe curious locals, but this was different. The figure moved with precision, carrying a small handheld device that pulsed with light. It wasn't random curiosity, it was professional. They were here for the dragon. Caden's mind raced. The chains weren't going to hold for long if someone triggered a resonance in the biofield. He needed a plan, and fast. He scanned the chains, noting the alloy's weak points. The dragon's eyes followed him, a silent question in their glow. He whispered, "We can't fight them head-on, not yet. But we can outsmart them." He darted across the hangar, gathering loose panels and broken machinery. Using old hinges, he rigged a simple trap, a swinging metal arm connected to the door sensor, meant to startle or delay any intruder. It wasn't much, but it might buy him precious seconds. He set the panels to reflect sunlight toward the doorway, hoping the glare would mask the dragon's movements if it needed to react. The figure stopped at the threshold, raising their device. A faint beep echoed in the hangar. The chains clinked violently. The dragon growled low, a sound that made the dust shake. Caden raised his hands, staying low, careful not to provoke the creature. "Easy, easy," he murmured. Suddenly the intruder lunged and the trap swung into action. Metal panels clanged, sunlight reflected sharply, and the figure stumbled. The dragon's tail whipped, rattling the chains, sending sparks from exposed metal. Caden froze, heart hammering. This was worse than he imagined. He had hoped to avoid direct contact with anyone outside. The dragon could kill with a single swipe. He thought quickly. He grabbed a metal rod from the floor and extended it toward the dragon, tapping on the chain lightly to create a rhythm. The creature paused, turning its head toward him. It understood, somehow, that he was signaling safety. He kept tapping, steady and slow. The growl subsided. The chains rattled in response, but not violently. The intruder recovered and took a step forward. Caden's pulse spiked. He needed more time. His eyes scanned the hangar. Old wiring ran along the walls, leading to the main console. If he could trigger the energy grid just enough to startle the intruder without harming the dragon, he might have a chance. He dashed across the floor, ignoring the clank of his boots, and pulled a lever. Sparks shot along the conduit, a small electrical surge buzzing through the panels. The intruder screamed, falling back from the sudden jolt. The dragon shifted closer to Caden, almost protective. Its wings brushed the floor and the chains strained but held. Caden realized it trusted him, enough to wait, enough to act with him. He whispered, "We're not done yet. But we're smarter than them. We'll survive." The intruders scrambled to their feet, scanning for threats. Caden's mind raced. He couldn't let them learn the dragon's secrets. He grabbed another broken panel and flung it, narrowly missing the intruder's head but forcing them to duck. The dragon responded instinctively, letting out a low roar that reverberated through the hangar. The sound was more than intimidation, it was a warning. Caden noticed a flicker in the scanner readings. The chains were absorbing energy from the intruder's device. That was bad. If the device synced with the chains, it could overload the dragon's biofield. Seconds became critical. He ran to the main console, frantically pressing buttons to recalibrate the base's weak energy grid. Sparks flew, and the intruder froze, unsure of what was happening. Come on, Caden muttered under his breath. The dragon's eyes were fixed on the intruder, muscles tense, ready to strike if necessary. Caden adjusted the energy flow, redirecting it to create a safe buffer around the creature. The chains vibrated violently, then slowly steadied. The intruder froze, realizing their device no longer had control. Caden exhaled, chest heaving. The hangar was quiet again, except for the faint hum of the chains and the dragon's measured breathing. He had survived, but he knew this was only the first challenge. Someone else would come. Someone smarter, stronger, better prepared. The dragon's eyes followed him, reflecting both fear and trust. He crouched next to the creature, whispering, "We can't stay hidden forever. But together we're stronger than they think." A low rumble echoed from the base's perimeter, not from the intruder but from deep underground. The dragon stiffened and the chains rattled again. Caden felt it through the floor. Something else was stirring. Something he hadn't noticed before. And he realized with a sinking feeling that the real challenge had only just begun. Caden's heart pounded as he scanned the hangar. The low rumble under the floor wasn't random, it was movement. Something massive, something alive, was buried beneath the old base. The dragon's chains clinked sharply, resonating with the vibrations. Its eyes glowed brighter, reflecting both fear and readiness. Caden knew he had no time to hesitate. He ran to the console, fingers flying over buttons and sliders, trying to bring the base's old sensors online. Sparks crackled along broken circuits, illuminating the hangar in sharp bursts. The readings were chaotic, energy surges, movement patterns, unknown mass signatures. Whoever had left this place hadn't finished their work. Remnants of alien tech hummed in hidden panels. A series of beeps alerted him. External scanners had detected movement outside the perimeter. Scavengers. Professionals, drawn here by the unusual energy readings. They weren't just curious, they were hunters. They wanted the dragon. They would take it, weaponize it, or destroy it. Caden had seconds to act. He turned to the dragon. Its head followed him, eyes sharp and calculating. He whispered, "We can't fight them with brute force. We'll have to outthink them." He began dragging panels, wires, and old machinery, setting traps in a way that only a human mind could improvise under extreme pressure. The first wave approached the hangar doors. Their footsteps were heavy, mechanical, precise. Caden ducked behind a stack of crates, heart hammering, hands shaking but determined. He rigged a small panel to collapse with a chain reaction, enough to create a barrier but not enough to harm the dragon. Then the intruders entered. 4 figures, cloaked in protective suits, weapons glowing faintly in the dim light. They didn't hesitate, they aimed for the dragon. Caden's pulse spiked. One misstep and the creature could be lost, or worse, he could die. He triggered the first trap, a swinging metal beam that knocked the nearest intruder off balance. Sparks flew, metal clanged, and the hangar erupted into chaos. The dragon shifted, tail lashing, wings twitching. Caden stayed low, shouting over the noise, "Stay! Don't break the chains unless you have to." The creature hesitated, listening, weighing his command against instinct. He realized in that moment how intelligence and trust could bridge species. The dragon's courage mirrored his own. One intruder recovered quickly, aiming a device at the chains. Caden lunged, shoving a crate between them, then yanked a panel to reflect a burst of sunlight directly into the device's sensors. It fizzled, sparking and smoking. The intruder cursed, stumbling back. The dragon's chains vibrated violently, reacting to the interference, but it didn't attack. Caden had bought a few more precious seconds. He darted to the console, scanning for options. The base still had old energy grids active, unstable but usable. He could redirect the power, create a shockwave that would force the intruders out, but it risked harming the dragon if he miscalculated. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the sweat dripping into his eyes, and began rerouting energy through the grids. Sparks shot along the walls, and the floor vibrated under the dragon's feet. The intruders shouted, realizing their devices were failing. One fired a pulse that hit the wall, causing a small explosion. Debris rained down, but the dragon ducked instinctively, chains rattling. Caden ran toward it, tapping the chains lightly in a rhythm they had practiced together in those hours of observation. The dragon understood, the rhythm meant safety. It relaxed slightly, enough for Caden to redirect more energy. He activated the main grid, sending a controlled surge through the hangar. The intruders froze, thrown back by the unexpected electromagnetic pulse. Their weapons sputtered and died. The dragon's chains rattled in response, but it didn't lash out. Instead, it growled low, a warning to anyone who dared approach. Caden felt a surge of relief. He had turned the base itself into an ally. But relief was brief. The rumble under the floor intensified. Dust fell from the ceiling and a deep vibration pulsed through the hangar. The dragon stiffened again, wings flexing, claws scraping the concrete. Something underground had reacted to the energy surge. Something massive. Caden's stomach tightened. He hadn't anticipated this. He realized the danger wasn't just the intruders. The base itself was unstable and the underground systems could collapse. If that happened, the dragon could be crushed or the energy could overload, destroying everything. He ran calculations in his head, mapping weak points and escape routes. His courage didn't make him reckless, his intelligence guided every move. The intruders scrambled to recover, shouting over the growls and rumbling. Caden looked at the dragon. Its eyes met his, glowing with awareness and trust. He whispered, "We'll have to move. Now." He climbed onto a nearby platform, signaling the dragon with a series of taps and gestures they had practiced. The creature hesitated, then obeyed. The base shook violently as the rumble grew stronger. Dust and sparks filled the hangar. Caden grabbed the nearest control panel, redirecting power to stabilize the floor for just a few moments longer. It wasn't enough to hold indefinitely, but enough for the dragon to step free when he unlocked the first chains. Chains screeched as they began to give way. The dragon's wings flexed, ready to propel it if necessary. Caden's heart raced. He knew that what came next would determine survival or death. One miscalculation, one wrong second, and everything could be lost. And somewhere, in the shadows outside the hangar, the intruders were recovering, more determined than ever. Caden swallowed hard, tightened his grip on the chain release lever and whispered, "We're doing this together. Time to fight smart, and survive." The chains rattled. The dragon's eyes locked on his. The base groaned under the weight of unseen forces below. Caden took a deep breath, preparing for the next move, the one that would change everything. Something beneath the floor shifted sharply, a sound like stone breaking. The dragon twitched, wings stretching. Caden knew they had seconds. Seconds to escape, or seconds before the underground danger erupted. And he realized that the next move wasn't just about courage, it was about using every ounce of human ingenuity he had left to turn the impossible into survival. Caden's hands shook, but his mind was razor-sharp. The rumble beneath the floor was louder now, like a beast awakening. Dust poured from the ceiling, hitting the dragon's scales. The intruders were scrambling, trying to regain control of their devices, but Caden knew their tech wouldn't last. Time was slipping through his fingers. He glanced at the chains. They were holding but barely. The dragon flexed its wings, muscles rippling beneath its dull, dusty scales. Its eyes were locked on him, full of both fear and trust. Caden swallowed hard. There was only one choice. If he wanted to survive, if he wanted the dragon to survive, he had to free it. He ran to the main lever controlling the chains. The metal was warm under his gloves. Sparks flew as he adjusted the tension, calculating how much energy to release without harming the creature. One wrong move and the dragon could thrash violently, destroy the hangar, or worse, crush him. He exhaled slowly, then pulled. The chains groaned and strained, then broke with a loud, metallic snap. The dragon rose to its full height, wings unfurling like sails catching wind. Energy pulsed along its body, illuminating the hangar with a soft, molten glow. Caden felt the floor vibrate under him, adrenaline flooding his veins. He shouted, "Go. Now." The intruders reacted too late. The dragon's tail swept the nearest one off their feet, sending them crashing into a pile of debris. The other two tried to aim their devices, but sparks from the broken chains shorted their equipment. Caden knew this was his chance. He grabbed a harness from the storage locker, his improvised safety rig, and signaled the dragon with hand taps he had practiced for hours. The creature hesitated, then leapt. Caden latched onto the harness just as the dragon launched into the air. The hangar shook violently, dust and rubble fell around them. The remaining intruders fired wildly, but the dragon's wings created powerful gusts that knocked their weapons aside. Sparks from the collapsing ceiling ignited old machinery, adding chaos. Caden felt the pull of gravity and the dragon's energy. His mind worked faster than ever, calculating angles, adjusting his grip, timing his movements to stay safe. The dragon seemed to understand his intentions. It tilted, soared, and twisted through the collapsing hangar with perfect synchronization, dodging falling debris. Outside, the sun cut through the dust. The base's perimeter was alive with instability. Caden realized that if they stayed too long, the underground tremors would collapse the structure entirely. He tapped the dragon on the side, signaling for one final surge. The creature flexed its wings, unleashing a concentrated blast of energy from its biofield. Sparks and smoke rose as the base's outer walls groaned. The intruders were thrown aside by the blast, screaming in panic. Caden's stomach lurched as the dragon shot upward, higher than he had ever flown. The hangar shrank below them, walls crumbling, metal twisting. He clung tight, muscles burning, heart hammering, adrenaline coursing like fire. The dragon's eyes met his for a brief moment, and he saw understanding there, gratitude, recognition, and a bond formed in the furnace of danger. They cleared the atmosphere just as the base exploded behind them. A wave of heat and debris surged skyward. Caden's breath caught. The explosion was massive, shaking the ground for miles. He realized the humans who had abandoned the base had left a final safeguard, a self-destruct protocol to prevent the dragon from being stolen. He had survived it, but only because he had relied on courage, intellect, and trust in the creature he had just freed. High above the planet, the dragon slowed, circling him gently. Its wings beat with immense power, yet it moved with control. Caden adjusted the harness, breathing heavily, heart still racing. He had freed the dragon, outsmarted the intruders, and survived what should have been impossible. The planet below was a cloud of dust and fire, the base no more than smoldering ruins. The intruders would not recover in time to capture the creature. Caden felt relief, but it was tempered with awe. He had looked death in the face, relied on a being far stronger than himself, and survived through quick thinking and courage. The dragon landed on a nearby rocky plateau, wings folding around it protectively. Caden climbed off the harness, legs wobbly, knees scraped from the harness straps. He stepped closer, hand trembling, and touched its side. The creature exhaled softly, a warm vibration that made the rocks underfoot tremble. "We made it," he whispered. His voice was raw, tired, but filled with triumph. "We survived because we had to, because we had courage." The dragon nudged him gently as if confirming his words. It wasn't just a creature of myth, it was alive, intelligent, and grateful. Caden realized that this bond, formed in the chaos of destruction, was stronger than anything he had ever known. Humans, he thought, could survive anything, not because of brute strength but because of courage, ingenuity, and determination to act when everything seemed impossible. As the sun rose over the jagged horizon, Caden looked back at the smoldering planet. He knew they weren't safe forever, but for now they had survived together. The dragon crouched beside him, wings folded but ready to soar at a moment's notice. Caden exhaled, feeling exhaustion and exhilaration together. He had faced impossible odds. He had freed the dragon. And he had proven once again that humans could rise to any challenge, even one that seemed beyond reason. But deep in the shadows of the destroyed base, faint movements stirred. The intruders were not done. They had survived the explosion. They would regroup. Caden didn't falter. He glanced at the dragon, then up at the horizon. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a smile. Caden and the dragon landed on a rocky moon several kilometers from the planet they had escaped. The air here was thin but breathable, and the sun cast long shadows over jagged cliffs and craggy outcrops. The dragon crouched beside him, wings folding tightly, breathing in slow, measured gusts. Caden ran a hand along its scaled side, feeling warmth, strength, and intelligence beneath his fingertips. He had freed it, and together they had survived what seemed impossible. For a long moment they simply stood there, catching their breath. The moon was quiet, save for the faint rumble of distant meteors striking the surface. Caden's mind raced, calculating what needed to be done next. They couldn't return to the outer rim. The base had exploded, and the intruders were likely regrouping. If anyone came looking, they would be ready. But here, on this isolated moon, he could start over. He could give the dragon the sanctuary it deserved. The dragon nudged him toward a flat plateau, as if urging him to follow. Caden smiled faintly. They had an unspoken understanding. He began gathering rocks and debris to construct a rudimentary shelter, using old panels from his survival pack. The dragon watched, tilting its massive head, its amber eyes tracking every movement. It wasn't just a creature, it was intelligent, aware, capable of learning and perhaps even reasoning. As he worked, Caden thought about the lives that had led to this moment. He had spent years exploring, surviving, repairing, and studying unknown technology. He had faced pirates, storms, alien environments, but nothing had prepared him for this. A being so powerful yet so vulnerable, chained and abandoned, relying on him to survive. And he hadn't hesitated. That was human courage. Not fearlessness, but the decision to act when everything was against you. Night fell quickly, painting the sky in shades of deep violet and orange. Caden lit a small heat lamp, careful to keep it safe from the dragon's sensitive energy field. He fed the creature a ration of protein paste, observing the way it consumed the food, precise and deliberate, as if it understood the value of what was given. He knelt beside it, exhausted but alert. "We made it," he whispered. "We're alive, and we're free." The dragon's low, vibrating growl sounded almost like agreement. Its eyes glimmered, reflecting the starlight above. In that moment, Caden realized that survival wasn't just about fighting, it was about understanding, trust, and courage in the face of impossible odds. The days that followed were a careful routine. Caden repaired old equipment from his pack, using it to monitor the moon's environment and create a secure perimeter. He scavenged the rocks and terrain to build shelters and barriers, learning to anticipate natural hazards. The dragon adapted quickly, following his movements, responding to gestures, even communicating through subtle sounds and body language. Together they became a team, human ingenuity paired with raw, untamed strength. Word of their survival began to spread through scattered transmissions. Traders and explorers spoke in hushed tones about the human who had tamed a dragon, survived the outer rim, and escaped an entire team of professional hunters. Caden didn't care about fame. The real victory was here, in the bond between human and creature, in the sanctuary they were building. Weeks passed. Caden and the dragon explored the moon, testing the limits of their environment. The dragon soared, lifting him briefly with its wings, and Caden felt a thrill unlike any other. He had never flown so freely, never relied on another being so completely. And yet, he trusted it implicitly, knowing that their combined courage and intelligence had saved both their lives. One evening, as twin suns dipped behind the horizon, Caden sat on a rock, watching the dragon curl around a small ridge. He reflected on the journey, the abandoned base, the chains, the intruders, the near-death moments, the careful strategies, and the split-second decisions that had kept them alive. Every step had required courage, every choice demanded clarity of mind, and every risk had been calculated, but without compassion, none of it would have worked. He smiled faintly, the weight of exhaustion heavy but satisfying. Humans could face impossible odds, he realized. They could survive, adapt, and even inspire trust in beings far stronger than themselves. This dragon, once chained and abandoned, was living proof that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the cruelest circumstances. The moon was quiet now. Stars glittered above like scattered gems. Caden traced a finger along the dragon's wing, feeling its warmth, its pulse, its life. They were safe, for now, but he knew the galaxy would continue to challenge them. Pirates, scavengers, or worse might return. But together they could face anything. Humans were capable of remarkable feats when guided by purpose and moral courage. As dawn approached, the dragon lifted its head and emitted a low, melodic roar that echoed across the craggy landscape. It was a sound of freedom, of trust, of survival. Caden felt pride swell in his chest. Not just pride for himself, but pride in humanity, in the ability to rise, to act with intelligence, compassion, and bravery, and to protect life against impossible odds. He whispered almost to himself, "We've survived the impossible, and we'll keep surviving. Together." The dragon shifted closer, resting its massive head near his knees, eyes calm and trusting. Caden reached out and touched its snout, feeling the steady warmth beneath the scales. For the first time in weeks he allowed himself to relax. The danger of the abandoned base, the intruders, the tremors, they were all behind them. What remained was possibility. A new home, a partnership forged in the crucible of survival, and a legacy of courage that would echo far beyond the desolate moon they now called home. In the quiet aftermath, Caden understood that the greatest victories weren't just in survival. They were in rising above fear, embracing intelligence, and showing humanity at its finest. And as he looked at the dragon breathing softly in the twin sun glow, he knew they had done more than survive. They had triumphed. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, those who doubted humans would someday hear the story. They would see that courage, ingenuity, and heart could turn the impossible into reality. Caden leaned back, watching the first light stretch across the cliffs. He and the dragon had survived. They had triumphed. And humanity, once again, had proven itself capable of greatness.